The F-16C Block 50 is coming to War Thunder in update Sons of Attila. Here's everything you need to know about it. Before we get started with this jet for real, it is worth pointing out at least that the modification cost for this thing is absolutely insane. Needless to say, this stock grind is going to be pretty rough. To GE, the modification is going to cost you 1,000 Golden Eagles just for the end of the line mods alone. And that is per mod at the end of the line as well. So it's going to be a few thousand if you're going to be doing GE to get the modifications for this plane, which you can get help with today's video sponsor, Free GE for War Thunder. GE for War Thunder is an app you can download on the Google Play Store in which you complete tasks of varying difficulty to earn various amounts of Golden Eagles. Depending on how difficult and time-consuming the task is, that's going to determine how much Golden Eagles you get for free for completing it. I would recommend doing the easier, shorter ones and just get a few hundred Golden Eagles and put that towards unlocking some modifications for new aircraft, getting a low-tier SL grinder, or maybe even just buying a day of premium time for a weekend grinding session. Download the app in the description down below and use my code on screen here for 10 extra Golden Eagles. Starting off, let's compare the performance of the current F-16s we have in game. For those who don't know, there are two different types of F-16 flight models. We have the F-16A Block 10 flight model found on the US F-16A, the Japanese AJ, and the Israeli F-16A nets. Then there's also the F-16 Block 15 and Block 20 flight models, which are the same thing, and they are found on the F-16 ADF in the US tree, the F-16 MLU in the Chinese tech tree, and the Italian F-16 ADF. The Block 10 flight model is just objectively better, sporting the same engine thrust as the Block 15 while also being more agile. This allows it to pull tighter turn radius and just rate better. It's all around just more maneuverable and better at dogfighting. Fast forward to Sons of Attila dev server, and now every flight model of the F-16 has been improved. The Block 10 flight model pulls even harder than it did before, as well as the Block 15 and Block 20. The Block 10 is still objectively better, as they seem to have both gotten an equal bump in pull, but this makes it so that the Block 15 and 20 isn't so stiff to play. They kind of famously were a little bit rough, and mainly so the Block 15 and the Block 20 are the ones that kind of developed the myth that they had some kind of G limiter on them, which they didn't, and they never had. It was just a really bad flight model. So the buff to both of the flight models on the Block 10 and the Block 15 and 20 is very welcome. It just makes the Block 10 that much more cracked, and it makes the Block 15 and 20 a lot more fun to play, a lot more enjoyable. In comes the F-16C Block 50 from this dev server, and the F-16A Block 10 is still the best dogfighter at top tier, and it'll absolutely demolish the Block 50 in a dogfight. While the F-16C Block 50 has better engine that produces more thrust to weight ratio is what ultimately matters here, and the Block 50's new engine does nothing for it in this department. The Block 50 only has a little bit better thrust to weight, under 300 kilometers an hour, which is basically irrelevant. I'll throw the thrust chart up here, you guys can kind of look at it yourself, and at all other speeds, the thrust to weight is basically the same as the old Block 10, but the old Block 10 pulls significantly tighter turn radius. This allows it to pull inside of the Block 50 in one circle maneuvers, as well as rate better and pull around onto its tail faster in two circles. The footage you see on screen is actually the F-16 ADF, which is a Block 15. Everything I just mentioned about the Block 50 and the Block 10 still applies to the Block 50 and the Block 15. The Block 15 just isn't quite as strong as the Block 10 is. As you can see though, it is still more than sufficient to consistently beat the Block 50 in a dogfight. As far as air-to-ground goes, the F-16C is a direct upgrade compared to the US's existing close air support abilities from the F-16A Block 10. Most notably, you get access to two new weapon systems, the AGM-65D Maverick air-to-ground missile and the Lightning II targeting pod. And of course, you get GBU-24 Paveway 3s to go with that targeting pod. These are 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs. It's pretty interesting that it gets access to the Lightning II targeting pod because this is a 2006 installment of the F-16C Block 50, meaning the one we have in game is a 2006 aircraft at the earliest, and this gets especially interesting as we move into the air-to-air section of the plane. For air-to-air, the only thing new on the F-16 is an HMD, which you can use to at least lock the AIM-9L for right now. I'm not sure if you can lock the radar with it yet. I don't believe you can, but you probably will be able to on the live server. But at the very least, anyways, you can slave the seeker head of the AIM-9L using the HMD. Having this new capability is fantastic, but it isn't going to offer you the close-range IR missile performance you get with something like an R-73 with an HMD, as the AIM-9L doesn't have the thrust vectoring, and it was really just never designed to be a dogfight missile like even say the R-60M. Remember how I said that the Lightning II pod makes this a 2006 F-16? Well, so does the HMD. This upgrade only became available to F-16s in 2006. The fact that this plane has 2006 equipment with 1980s air-to-air missiles is just baffling to me, and very questionable decision on Gaijin's end, especially when you look at its counterpart of the patch, the MiG-29 SMT, which is also an early 2000s aircraft. But unlike the F-16C, however, the SMT gets modern weaponry to go with it. Its air-to-air loadout includes the R-73 and the R-27ER, as well as the R-27ET, which those are 1990s missiles and still in common use for the Russian Air Force today. Even if it's not the most modern variations of those missiles, they are still used in some form. On the flip side, however, the US Air Force has completely retired the AIM-9L, which is a 1970s missile, and the AIM-7M, which is a 1980s missile. They don't even use them anymore. Speaking of the MiG-29 SMT, how does the F-16C compare? Well, in a dogfight, the F-16C just wins. Despite being the worst dogfighting F-16, the MiG-29 SMT is considerably more boat-like and just doesn't like to dogfight at all. A MiG-29A would definitely put up a much better fight, but since this patch is all about the SMT, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of clips on how I demonstrate to just not die to a MiG-29 SMT and its R-73s. Jumping into the dogfight here, the very first thing that I want you guys to notice and know is that the F-16 is, well, it's just like all the other F-16s, it likes to do the two circles. The raid fights just keep flying in a circle until you end up right behind your target. And don't switch directions, don't change your flight path, just keep on turning in the same direction, and inevitably your target is going to run out of energy. And so he's trying to dip his nose here to get a bit more energy, a bit more pull, and so I'm going to react and do the exact same thing, but I'm just going to keep turning. And I'm ever so slowly coming around onto his tail here and getting my gun on target. He's basically got no chance of surviving this. If he reverses his turn, he's going to create distance out in front of me to where I can shoot him, and if he doesn't reverse his turn, he's just going to run out of energy here. And so he reverses his turn, it catches me off guard, so what do? Well, I just keep turning. I don't actually have to pull in for that gunshot. I can just keep on raiding and come around the circle on the deck, and once you get them down on the deck like this, there's absolutely no chance. They're just dead. You see me cut inside even deeper behind him rather than continuing to turn to try to stay out of his HMD, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later. But yeah, the F-16C is no exception to the other F-16s in that you can just continuously fly around in a circle, fly the same direction, and you will come around behind every single jet that you will face at top tier. And I did mention that the MiG-29 SMT is quite a boat. It doesn't really like dogfighting, it's certainly not a MiG-29A. However, the HMD R-73 is a bit of an equalizer at times. It really can be a problem. It's going to get you from within a kilometer, and your flares are pretty much going to be meaningless at that point. You have to make sure you're pre-flaring, you have to make sure you're facing them head-on aspect, otherwise you're just going to die if they get the R-73 off. And the way you keep them from getting the R-73 off in the first place is to just be very passive and lag behind them the entire time. And I'm going to demonstrate that in some of these clips here. You're going to see me take very passive lines. I'm basically just pointing the nose of my plane behind his. Whichever, like you see right here, he changes directions. He goes left, so I point my nose a little bit to the right so I can get behind him and deny his HMD the angle to be able to look at me. As long as I stay in the back hemisphere of his aircraft, there's pretty much no way he's ever going to be able to lock me with that HMD. And again, he's going left, so I'm going to go right. Because if I pull in for a shot here, I might get the shot, sure, but he might get an R-73 off at me with the HMD. Or if I miss, I'm going to be very close and within proximity of probably being able to get into a rolling scissor. And so again, just watch how passive my line is here. I am making no mistakes here to make sure that I don't end up anywhere near his HMD angle, and I just don't want an R-73 shot at me. And yes, I do kind of overdo it for this clip. You don't have to be this passive, but I'm really just trying to drive home the point that your goal when you're fighting a MiG-29 SMT is to not necessarily get the shot in, because if you miss, you might die, you're going to shoot out right in front of him, or he might get an angle at you, or he might get an angle at you anyways. And so you want to just really make sure you work your way behind him. Going into a merge, a great way to do that is to turn the opposite direction he does. And I don't really do a great job of that here, but I do get front aspect on this R-73, so I'm able to flare that away. And that's the thing, if you're going to be within the HMD field of view, you have to make sure that you're going to face that R-73 head on and front aspect. That's your best chance at flaring. And now I'm kind of getting into some sketchy territory, but I am going to come around on him. You can see I'm making my way behind him here ever so slowly. We're just going to kind of work our way around. But I do want to show you guys this clip because I kind of just forget how strong the R-73 is. And I really want you guys to notice the merge here. See how we're kind of entering this fight. Our nose is going nose to nose here. You call it the one circle. And that basically puts us in some kind of a scissor fight. And this is the only way the MiG-29 SMT is going to beat you, is if you let him get into some kind of scissor fight where he can pull in and get an R-73 shot using that HMD. So I'm going to try to counter this by just turning in the same direction, but I'm really not, because if you think about it, while he's climbing up, I should be kind of diving downwards. But instead, I'm just kind of flat turning around him, which lets him stall out, flip himself back down, and he's getting R-73s off, which means I'm not able to fly in the perfect position that I want. I'm going to have to fly in a way that's going to allow me to flare the R-73. And so now we're in some kind of downward spiral, which wouldn't necessarily be an awful thing if it wasn't for the fact that he started the spiral at a better position, and it is an extremely tight and close spiral at that. And so on the way down, I really should have been making a lot more separation than I am, but instead I just kind of let him get position. And there's really not much I can do. I'm too slow, we're too close, and he's just gonna end up getting an HMD R-73 at me, and it was pretty much a botched fight. So don't let that happen. You wanna make sure you keep some separation, keep it a route and escape for you to fly back towards their tail, and don't let it be that tight. Once again, look at my merge here. I am going nose to nose with him, which is not what I want to do. I want to go nose to tail. I want to be flying the opposite way that he is so that I can work my way behind him. But we do correct that pretty well here as we kind of change directions at the top of our loop. On the way down, we overshoot him a little bit, so we just don't panic. You just keep going. Don't try to switch your direction. Don't change your turning direction. Just keep on going. And the MiG-29 SMT is not going to keep up with you. You have better flight performance as long as you just keep flying and keep going the same direction. And as long as that direction is pointed at his nose, once again, look how he kind of shifted direction to the right. So I'm going to switch to the left. And that way, no matter where he goes, he's going to have a harder time getting that HMD on me because I'm flying as directly behind his 6 as I possibly can. And like I said, eventually, as long as you have better flight performance, you're just going to end up behind them, and there's nothing he's going to be able to do about that. So yes, the R-73 is going to be extremely annoying. I'm going to make a video about the R-73 next, but I do want to show you guys this clip just to show you that R-73 HMD absolutely still can be beat by superior flight performance. That's the F-16C. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you soon.